Kamala Harris, the current US vice president, is expected to announce her vice presidential pick on Monday. So, who are the runners and riders, and can the Democrats pick someone to help her capitalize on her momentum? Well, let's talk to Scott Lucas, professor of international politics at the Clinton Institute at University College Dublin. Scott, hello again.
Great to be here, Henry.
No, it's
Thanks.
great to talk to you, especially about this. So, Vice President Harris has all the momentum at the moment. She's not officially the Democrats' candidate for President of the United States, but she now has the delegate numbers. She can no longer be caught by anybody.
Yes, I mean, this was put in process really from a few hours after Joe Biden withdrew a couple of weeks ago from the presidential race. He immediately endorsed Harris. Other Democrats, high-profile Democrats, followed over the following hours and then days, culminating with the Obamas, Barack and Michelle. And then, meanwhile, other potential challengers for the nomination not only stepped aside, they endorsed Harris. And while they were doing this, the Harris campaign hit the ground running. They lined up the donors. Indeed, they raised within 36 hours. They raised more than $120 million. They've raised more than $200 million in the first few days of the campaign. She made a series of high-profile appearances to lay out her stance on the issues and to lay out that key line of, I'm a prosecutor, I'm running against a convicted felon.
Right. And when we talk about these figures, I mean, it's staggering, $200 million. I mean, you compare it with what we complain about here in this country. What impact might that have on her campaign and the choices she makes?
Well, the money, has a huge impact in that it enables you to get your message out more broadly and quickly. And this is going to be a toss-up election. I mean, it effectively reset with Biden's withdrawal. So that meant there's what, 8, 9 states that are in play where you want to get that message out very quickly. And indeed, partly because of the money, partly because I think the campaign's very, very well run, and partly because it's changed the narrative, where Harris is a much younger candidate, a candidate who's much more focused, can appeal to younger voters, women voters. She's closed that gap on Donald Trump already. How it might affect her eventual decisions in terms of policy, well, that's always a question because money has such a force in American politics. But what I tell you right now is that it's partly money that we're focused on, but don't underestimate the other thing here, and it's just simply energy.
Yes.
The Democrats and indeed some independent voters are simply mobilized because Harris is now able to run against Trump, whereas Joe Biden just wasn't going to be able to put up a fight.
Sure. And talking of that E word, energy, Scott, I'm surprised to see that apparently Donald Trump, if you read the reports, has agreed to a Fox News offer of a debate with Vice President Harris on September the 4th. If those two candidates are on stage together, the energy of Harris will make Trump look very old, very tired, very unfocused, and very unsure.
First of all, Henry, let's call out a deception
Oh,
where Donald Trump has effectively led the US and thus the international media by the nose. Donald Trump did not agree to a debate with Kamala Harris on Fox News on September 4th. Donald Trump pulled out of a debate that was already arranged first with Joe Biden and then with Kamala Harris on September 10th. That was taking place on ABC News. That had already been arranged, but Trump got cold feet. He got cold feet, especially when Harris became the nominee for the reasons you just identified. So to pull out of that debate, he said, I'm only going to debate her on Fox, which of course is a pro-Trump channel.
yeah.
And then what he did in the last 24 hours is suddenly say, oh, the debate is not going to be on September 17th, which is when Fox was thinking of having it. It's going to be on September 4th. So he's trying to bump Fox into doing this. He's trying to bump the rest of the American media into saying, oh, this was the debate that was planned all along,
Yeah.
when of course it wasn't. How successful he'll continue to be with these types of deception tactics, well, we'll see during the
We
campaign.
certainly will, Scott. Let's talk about this then. Vice President Harris is believed to be interviewing half a dozen potential running mates this weekend. Um, and the interview list, I'm just looking, really interesting. Some of them were pretty obvious potential vice presidents. Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. What do you think? I mean, whose positives exceed the others?
There's two other candidates, by the way,
Hmm.
Henry, and the Harris campaign has leaked this to the media.
Yes.
Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. Whether that's genuine, because Harris is speaking to all six men today, or whether they're using that to cover the fact they've already made the decision,
Yeah.
I'd say probably for a lot of people, Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania is a favorite. He's from a swing state. He's been widely hailed by Republicans and Democrats for being quite effective. For example, the way that he handled the fallout from the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which was in his state.
Hmm.
There may be a drawback because he has been seen as leaning a little bit too much pro-Israel on the Gaza issue. I personally don't think that'll be a factor. While I think he's a favorite, I wouldn't rule out a couple of the other candidates. I still think Andy Beshear of Kentucky, who is a Democrat in a Republican state and has been very effective as a pragmatic governor, I think he's still in the mix. And I think Mark Kelly, who's the senator from Arizona, he's got something distinctive in that he's the former astronaut and he's the husband of Senator Gabby Giffords, who was shot and critically wounded more than a decade ago. And so that, of course, would bring an
Oops.
issue
Scott.
like gun
Yeah.
control onto the table if Kelly was named.
Yeah.
Whichever these six is named, these are competent folks. The
Yeah.
Democrats, they didn't have much time in terms of the Harris campaign, but they do have the benefit of talent here.
Yeah, indeed. Very quick reflection on this. The US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin intervening into a plea deal with men accused of plotting September 11th attacks back in 2001, and they have spent the last 22 or so years in Guantanamo Bay. What do you make of that?
You're absolutely right, Henry. They've been imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay since 2003, about 18 months after 9/11. The reason why this trial has not occurred before now, after more than 20 years, is because they were amongst the Guantanamo Bay detainees who claim, in some cases accurately, that they were tortured. And that meant that prosecutors for the government worried that if this did come to a trial, the confessions would be thrown out and any evidence that was a product of those confessions. In other words, there was a poisoning of the well because of what is called enhanced interrogation.
Yeah.
So to sort of deal with this, you say, look, we're not going to pursue the death penalty. You get life in prison. What Lloyd Austin has done as a defense secretary is he said, I wasn't informed about this. I didn't approve this. Therefore, we have to push this to the side. Whether that's genuinely the case, whether there was an error in procedure, or whether Lloyd Austin is doing this because there's been pushback, including from families of victims of 9/11, that they want a trial and they want the death penalty on the table, well, that's an open question at this point.
Okay. Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at the Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.